All right, folks, right here from the shores of the Great Slave Lake in scenic Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, Canada. Do You Know Jack radio show with yours truly, Jack Antonio, and today, Annihilators, Jeff Waters on the line. How you doing, Jeff?
Yay, how you doing, Jack? I'm doing fantastic, and it's probably maybe not as cold as you, but I mean, -20 is fine, right?
Yeah, we can
Celsius,
handle that.
Celsius.
Well, listen now, man. I've got a few different things to talk to you about, and I'm definitely very appreciative that you made the time for me today.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure.
Now, I seem to recall us last time having this conversation about, cross Canada tours and how they're not necessarily the most lucrative for a metal band of your ilk, especially considering the fact that you've got a huge following in Europe. So I guess my first question just right out of the gate would be, you are doing a full slate of Canadian dates. So, what provoked you to make a decision like that?
Well, I think like what you said was kind of right. Just to add is specific to our band and our history and stuff like that. We backed out of States and Canada unintentionally when we were dropped way back in like '93, and so we were only able to get record deals and do touring and stuff like that in Asia and Europe. So we went where everything where we were wanted. And then what happened was, as traditional kind of heavy metal and thrash metal came back later, I guess 2005, 2010, started coming back, I figured, okay, well, now it's my chance to maybe get back in there, maybe because labels are signing bands, and there's a lot of bands going back to these traditional 80s heavy metal and thrash roots, and it looks like a great time coming. And it was like, sorry, buddy, you're too late, too old, you weren't big enough when you were here, so we're going to put our money into younger bands, and some of them that are coming up with newer styles and twists. So it was totally understandable. We weren't touring, we weren't releasing records, and I got a reality check when I tried to come back. So when you say that I said, or what I said, that it was not profitable, it was kind of more like you couldn't even do a tour or with Annihilator. You couldn't do anything in the United States or Canada without losing a ton of money, and that's a little different than breaking even or making money. That's coming back here would not be, hey, let's make money. It would be more like, let's not lose money, and then that would be good enough. So finally, we basically are at a time when promoters have said, okay, well, we're giving you enough money where you won't lose money. So that's really why we're back. We don't have to sort of, like, I pay my musicians. I hire all my musicians and crew, of course, and you have a tour bus and all this kind of stuff. So you do have expenses, and you have to pay them. It's not like a 4-person equal shared group where you're just slaving away in a van and everybody's kind of an equal member. So I do have to pay everybody. And luckily now it's finally, which is very lucky and I'm grateful for, is we can come back in Canada and maybe we get to go to the States again.
Yeah. Did you find then a few years ago when you did Vulcan Metal Battle that the waters were maybe a little right for interesting choice of words, the waters were right for waters in Canada?
Yeah, I've heard that joke a few times. Hey, listen to 70,000 tons of metal. I've got my Jamming with Waters and International Waters all-star jam that I've been doing there for many, many years. Yeah. So the name is useful once in a while. But I think the battle thing, Vakken Battle, I was judging that a few years, and I would go over to Vakken Festival when we weren't playing there, and sort of co-host the finals in Germany, near Hamburg, Germany. Yeah, I mean, I've sort of seen a lot of really good young bands coming back as early as maybe 10 years ago. Not coming back, but just starting out and playing stuff that I really like and getting influenced by the kind of music that I liked and like. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, the time has been right for Annihilator for a long time. It's just that, the industry itself was just not too receptive to us here. Yeah. So I'm paying the price for just going overseas and having a career there and sort of ignoring, in a sense, North America.
You've got, speaking of the Vakken Metal Battle Canada, you've got former winners Mutank that are going to be tagging along with you this time. Have they been on your radar for a while? Or?
Yeah, well, I've seen the guy, met the guys a few times in some of these Battle of Man competitions and even locally in Ottawa, and I think they're from Quebec and Ontario, both provinces, the Ottawa and Montreal areas. Yeah. So I've seen these guys and many other bands around, and when I was looking for a couple of bands to go with us, I wanted to take one of the 2 Australian bands that we'd had on our last CD cycle touring last year and the year before. There's two great Australian bands, so I called one of them and they were on, and I needed a second. And I thought, well, Mutank actually, I don't think they've even done a tour before, so I thought, it'd be kind of neat to have that, have these guys come along with us and see how they work out, so to speak, on their first tour across Canada. So it'd be kind of fun for them and us too.
And another big thing is Suicide Society's got the big Juno nomination.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. Well, it is weird. You put a bunch of albums out and they do pretty well internationally, and then we have this one, and it just got noticed, I guess, and I was very lucky. It's not something you expect, that's for sure, but it's quite an honor, at least, to get some kind of recognition a little bit in your home country. That's always a positive thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, now with you residing in Ottawa and the awards being held in Ottawa, are you gonna, sort of make the trip down a few blocks and check it out?
Literally 20 minutes from my place. I live outside the city, and when you're heading out in the direction that I live, you pass this sort of kind of city called Canada, which is where the event is taking, the televised Junos are taking place. And if you were coming to my place, halfway between Ottawa and my place would be Canada. So it is just down the road for us. We're basically where we go get groceries. We just continue, maybe a minute and a half, and we're at the event. So it's kind of handy for us. I sent him a letter years ago and said I would not accept a nomination unless you had it in Ottawa and they close to my house. Yeah.
Now, do you hold any weight on these awards and nominations, or are you sort of?
No, not at all. No, it's like our Canada's version of the Grammys, but
yeah.
It's not, as people know, probably no metal fans know, the States does have a big metal following. It's got a hell of a lot more people than Canada, and in Canada we have a very small metal community, but it's very, I don't know what the word is, dedicated sounds a little cheesy, but that's really what it is. You see, at least in Ottawa and Montreal, go to a lot of concerts in Montreal. It's only a few hours from where I am. You see the same fans for everything from a Disturbed concert to a Slayer concert. You got a lot of, fans that aren't just targeting one style of music. You see them sort of going to all the concerts, and they're really kind of a faithful, dedicated bunch. And I think I'm kind of in that too, because I go to a lot of concerts here. But there's not a lot, right? But our Junos are kind of similar to the States, where they, if you get an award, it's probably a day ceremony off camera, right?
Yeah.
For this kind of music. But, you get really cool artists. Like one of my favorite musicians in Canada, actually a couple, there's Danko Jones and Devin Townsend.
Mm-hmm.
Those are two guys I've always sort of, as well as Canada, been touring around the world, waving the flag for Canadian music and the fact that we're from Canada. And Devin Townsend and Danko Jones are two of the kind of Canadians where, in their own styles of music, they can play here and sometimes play for almost nobody, and then they go overseas to, let's say, Europe, to certain countries, or sometimes all countries, and they're just packing the places and really respected and really, given the respect. So those are a couple of artists where it's good to see when they're nominated, because a lot of Canadians have no clue what's going on with these bands or their own talents outside of the country. And Devin's nominated for his recent record too, so that's really cool. And there's a couple other good bands in the category. I don't think have much of a chance of winning, but I'm actually kind of looking forward to putting on my first sort of, not even suit, like a blazer. I went out to Guess, to the shopping mall.
Oh boy.
And I go, I have never worn anything like this before. I'm a black t-shirt, Slayer, AC/DC, the kind of guy with black jeans and running shoes. What the hell do I wear? And my fiance goes, okay, wear exactly what you just said you'd wear, and then put on a blazer. Done. So this is my fashion thing. I'm going to put on one piece of clothing that I've never worn before.
Yeah, I mean, I do appreciate the fact that we have an award of heavy metal ilk, and it seems to, at least in the selections, reward artistry a little bit more perhaps than the Grammys. But I mean, having voted on the Western Canadian Music Awards, I don't know why, but I never realized that literally every single voting person that votes on these awards is going to get the same ballots, and some people might, not even, they might be so far removed from who even Annihilator is that you'd practically just be guessing or picking the band with the most cool sounding name.
Again, you got so many more bands and population than people, and bigger industry and bigger money making machine in the States. You have the same thing here, but just in a smaller scale. But you look at these awards, and of course you're going to have the maybe not this year, but you'd have like the Avril Lavigne's and Nickelbacks, but you'd have the Drake, Michael Bublé, you'd have all all of the large acts there.
Yeah.
Nowhere near as many as would be down the States, but if you look at that quote hard rock metal category, you look at it and you go, there really aren't that many bands in Canada, are there? I mean, if you think about, if you sort of bypass the old school like Razor, Exciter, the sort of old school guys that are trying to come up with albums like Exciter, I don't think's put out a record with the original lineup since the 80s.
Yeah.
If you look at how many bands were putting out records in the last year or two that were eligible for the nominee thing, it's like there isn't anyone. I mean, compared to if you went to Germany, for example, you'd have about 50 bands we all know that would be nominated for things.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree 100%. The other thing,
just to finish that off, I'm kind of excited about going, but it's absolutely irrelevant to anything, because in my thing, it's more of an entertainment, fun kind of night to take my girl out to and just have a good time, because it's not, clearly that's not what you play in a metal band for, to be nominated for the Junos or Grammys and things like that. But it is really cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I think, knock on wood, because, I mean, especially if you're a superstitious person, but it would seem fitting that the guy from Ottawa wins an award in his own town. But, I mean, who knows the way voting goes, and, sometimes these are campaign-based, too, just to get your name into the ears of people that are voting, regardless of whether they actually listen or not, is irrelevant.
Yeah, there's this one, I forget the name of the awards, but it was almost 10 years ago. There was somebody contacted me about an independent type music award here in Canada, and the email was something to do with, hey, Annihilator, we like your band, blah, blah, would you like to, here's a link, you should probably apply, this is how you do it, you apply, or your record company applies to an awards show, and then their judges or committee or whatever it's called, they vote. It's really funny how it works.
Yeah.
And we won, and then you realize, well, nobody else even applied for it. So, you know what I mean? It's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's a good excuse to wear one piece of clothing I haven't worn before.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I guess if you're gonna go, you might as well go and make a time of it.
Yeah, I just want all the free food and the, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Something different in life. My life is really good in the sense that I get to travel and I get to meet a lot of cool people and work with some good people, and just music. I mean, it's the best, one of the best jobs in the world. Of course, it's you're not saving the world, but you're being creative and having a good time and meeting and choosing who you want to hang out with that are nice people, and then just sometimes you get these little bonus things that are outside of the normal thing. Like I do guitar clinics, for example, and I was always, teaching. Whenever I, heard about teachers, guitar teachers and stuff, this guy you went to high school with who was supposed to be the next Eddie Van Halen, he's been teaching guitar in a little shop for 20 years.
Yeah.
I would always kind of, not arrogant, but just being a dick, in my back of my head without telling anyone, I would be like, teacher, failed musician, was kind of not what pops up in my head, but what would sort of I would lean to in my head without really thinking about it. And then I started to do Epiphone Guitars said, do you want to do guitar clinics? And I said, well, never done one.
Yeah.
And I did my first little clinic over in Germany. It was like 300-400 people. So it was like, whoa, this is like, bands play to this amount of people. And I sat there and had this moment where I finally got it that guitar teachers, for example, people who do that for the right reasons, that it's like amazing thing, because you've got all these kids and that are really trying to learn from all these different guitar players and find their way musically, whether it's professionally, semi-professionally, or just for fun. And you've got these people sitting there teaching them that these people are looking at the teacher, looking for every single little bit of information that they can get from the teacher. And that, after my first clinic, I had the most respect for people who teach, for example. So you get to do all these neat little things that sort of open your eyes up to life outside of just that one thing you do in a band.
Yeah. Well, teaching and performing music, whichever route you go down, it's all about reaching the most amount of people with your talent. And some people have the knack to teach, and I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, we all aspire to be the touring musician, but it doesn't necessarily play out that way. And sometimes it works out for the better that you end up in a classroom situation anyway, waving a stick in front of band instruments. That's what I do.
Yeah, if you think about it, all the times when I would, for example, was watching MTV and Headbangers Ball and Much Music's Power Hour and all these things that were around in the 80s, and it was literally the second or third biggest form of music in the world, in metal. Mm-hmm. You can watch Eddie Van Halen, or you can watch Randy Rhoads on a crappy old VHS bootleg videotape and listen to him live. And you can watch all these great guitar players, but then you can also literally sit down with somebody that you don't know, who's not in a band, and all this kind of stuff, and you can learn even more.
Triple Threat, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that, came out January 27th, and I think this has been talked about a lot, but you put a little acoustic thing together in the studio, and you had a full slate of guys backing you up, which is a bit of an anomaly in terms of how you normally work a studio record. Am I right?
Yeah, the idea was one of the guys at our record company, who was the main A&R guy there at UDR Records in Germany. He also was the top A&R guy at SPV Records, which is a legendary, for many decades, a legendary German hard rock and heavy metal and thrash metal label, who had many bands you and I know on that label in Europe.
Sure.
And his name is Jay Lansford. He called me up, I don't know when it was, I think it was December 2015, and said he would like to do put something out between your next studio album and the one you just released. Because they knew we were doing a lot of touring for our last album. We did 18 months off and on for the last record, which we've never done since our third album, or fourth album, I think. So it was like, put something out in between, and I said, well, on one side, I know what the finances are like at labels and in the industry. I don't think you're going to want to pump the money into doing something like I'm telling a label this. Like, I don't think it's worth borrowing or putting it on paper, the money to put some kind of package out, because it's not what works financially for bands and labels necessarily. He said, yeah, but we don't want you to just do a live album. We want to come out and or a live DVD. We want you to do some kind of cool ideas that would make it stand out. So we put our heads together and we thought, well, doing a live concert is, unless you spend like $60,000-$70,000 on it, it's really just, there's the band live with a half-assed filming and mixing and all that stuff. And it doesn't really stand out. I mean, there's so many other bands that do that. And you can watch YouTube. I mean, you can watch bands live, no problem.
Yeah.
So we thought, okay, well, a concert, yes, that's a given if we're going to do something. What else could we do that's neat? I thought, well, like a little mini documentary, but not a sort of past thing, more of a current, what life's like where I'm living and where the studio is, and with the current band members I got, and what life's like in Canada. A lot of Europeans really want to know, like, are very interested in little things like, well, what's Canada like, or what's San Antonio, Texas like, or Vancouver,
Yeah.
So maybe do something that's not, it couldn't be totally boring and can't be 2 hours of filming and me, all that crap. So we figured, okay, let's just do like 45 minutes to an hour and really plan it out and write it out that we're going to do a whole pile of stuff, from studio stuff to at the beach to driving around talking about things that hopefully aren't too boring. And then the third disc, we thought, let's do a live acoustic thing. And it scared the hell out of me doing that, but it was because I'm more of a sit in the studio and play it over and over again until you get it right guy. I'm not one of those guys that can just go up and casually jam with a club band that says, okay, do you know this song? Let's do it, and work my way into that. I have to plan this out and rehearse it. I'm just not good at walking on like that. So doing a full live acoustic thing and then singing half of the stuff was terrifying for me. So I really had to plan that out and hire some other guys to come in. And Mark LaFrance is a guy that we worked with before on early albums as a backup singer, and he's a Vancouver guy who sang on everything from Bon Jovi to David Lee Roth to Motley Crue records and things like that. So I gave him the songs I couldn't sing, and I took the rest myself, and he sang backups, and we hired another session guitar player along with our guitar player Aaron. And yeah, it was that was spawned by that Van Halen album that came out like 2012, I think it was. What the heck was it called again? It's that last Van Halen album.
Oh, geez, yeah, it's on the
different kind of truth. Different kind of truth, right?
Yes, yeah.
It had on that. It had 4 black and white bonus videos. If you download it on iTunes or whatever, you downloaded the deluxe version. You got these 4 videos of Van Halen in Eddie's studio in black and white. David Lee Roth's dog running around. It's like they just plopped down in a seat and were in a good place together where they were all happy to be back together. And they were jamming these 4 like beautiful girls in Panama and things like that. And when I saw that, I said, wow, I would love to do something in my studio where, not black and white, but just where we got together and went over some older Annihilator songs and converted a few sort of little heavier ones down a little bit to lighter songs, and not do 4, just do like, a dozen or something. Yeah. So we did that, and then before we knew it, we had 3 different DVDs and put it together, and it was like, okay, now that is a good package. I mean, for the fans that like us, and for anybody that's curious about us, that might be an interesting way to start too.
Sure.
Phew! That was all in one breath, by the way.
Wow, that's impressive. That's very good. But I mean, that's the full explanation for the whole triple threat thing. And I mean, it is, I think, speaking from a personal perspective, I think, maybe a lot of fans are looking for that little bit more, especially if you're going to step forward and buy physical product nowadays.
Yeah, I got a slight flack from some fans who either just like us for our more heavier music, which we're not a heavy band. I mean, we've got some heavy stuff and we're influenced by a bit of Slayer, Metallica, Megadeth, some heavy thrash, but yeah. I was never good at that. I always admired stuff like 5 Minutes Alone by Pantera and just the heavy and brutality and the adrenaline and violent rush you get from some Slayer stuff. And I just couldn't translate that into what I do, because I still lean towards a cross between that stuff and over to everything from like Scorpions' Blackout album to Loudness to Randy Rhoads stuff to a lot of the heavy metal, more melodic stuff and hard rock stuff like AC/DC and that. So I was always admiring these bands that would come out with these brutally heavy songs, and I tried, but I realized just do what you're doing, because that's not where you're from. We do have some heavy stuff, but it just doesn't always go under the name Annihilator for somebody new. Usually these days, a new kid would hear the title of a band called Annihilator, and they would assume that it's just going to be something absolutely brutal. But we're traditional 80s heavy metal and thrash band. So this triple threat, when it came out, newer people or curious people were like, acoustic stuff, what the hell is this? And it was kind of like, oh, no, I mean, it's done very well. I'm just saying on the negative, on the not so positive side, a lot of people were going, wow, I mean, why don't you just come out with a brutally heavy album? And I'm like, this is just a little present or gift between the 2 records for the people that would actually want this. And then we're full on into a new album while this thing's released. And so now the new record's going to probably surprise people, because it seems to have went the other way again.
Well, I guess that would be an operative question as well, is like, where are you at in terms of a new studio record? Are you through the writing process? Have you put some tracks down?
Yeah, I'm just sitting in my studio here looking right at, I've got 3 songs sort of tweaked editing-wise, so to speak, for the music, meaning cleaning up clicks and pops and noises and guitar parts where your hand, at the end of something where you're supposed to stop, your hand went to squeak. So things like that. But musically, it's written and done. It's just, I'm doing this sort of boring computer kind of editing and cleaning up and getting ready for vocals and mixing. So,
are you doing the heavy lifting on the vocals again with this one?
Yes, fortunately and unfortunately. Fortunately for a lot of fans overseas that like what I'm doing. Unfortunately, because I'm 51 and I the idea of going, from the first album '89 to the fourth album in '94, never singing, and then all of a sudden, wham, you're the singer, and you've got to go for 3 albums in a row.
Yeah.
Then thinking, okay, that's it. I'm not doing this anymore. And hiring different singers over the years. Found Dave Padden for the last 12, 13 years before our last album came out, and he was our singer, I thought, till the band was going to be finished.
Mm-hmm.
He left unexpectedly, and still good friends. And I thought, well, here we go again. Nice big 15-year or whatever it is break from singing, and here I go again in my 40s and late 40s. So now I'm 51 and trying to stay in reasonable shape to do this, because I think the number one reason I'm doing this is singing is because at this point is because it's a challenge. I mean, it's become this sounds wrong, but it's become kind of easy to, when you have a singer in the band, for me, is you do a record, okay, it's time to go on tour, you practice for a week before rehearsals, you do your rehearsals, bang, all you do is stand on stage, bang your head up and down, sweat, run around, have a lot of fun, and it's not very challenging on guitar when that's all you have to do, for me.
Yeah.
Doing the singing thing is the complete opposite. It's cross between you get insecure, embarrassed, you screw up, and you want to get better at it, so you're at least not, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I know I'm never going to be a great singer, but I think in the studio I'm a good singer. I just have to do some more work on being a little more original, and I have a lot of work to do live with it. But when you're standing in front of 100,000 fans and they're all singing your songs off your new album, or a song off your new album, I think it gives you a little bit more security and makes you a little more drive and thinking, hey, I can do this. So,
yeah, definitely.
But it's all about working hard and just enjoying it. And mainly for me, it's a challenge. I just want to do it. I'm so nervous and so insecure about the vocal stuff that I don't want to run away from it. I want to actually do it and finish it and go, I like this,
Yeah, well, listen, Jeff, it's always awesome talking to you, and I see that your cross-Canada tour starts July. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Starts June 13th in Victoria, and you're pretty much hitting a different Canadian town almost every day. You got Vancouver on the 14th, Kelowna on the 15th, Calgary on the 16th, Edmonton on the 17th.
Saskatoon, Winnipeg, Regina. Yeah.
Yeah, I could literally list every single date, but I mean, you can also hit up Annihilator on Facebook or the website, and they'll be able to give you all the info there.